Hello and welcome to the Keep Right On podcast. I'm Alex Dicken, and as ever, I'm joined by my co-host Brian Dick. We're going to be going over the defeat to Middlesbrough on Tuesday evening and all the fallout that has followed. It's going to be a bit of a therapy session today, I think, Brian, more than a normal podcast recording, because Blues are in the mire in the Championship, 21st in the table, 1 point above the relegation places, with Watford to come before the international break. Brian, going straight back to Tuesday night's game, just give us your initial reflections on what it means for Blues in the grander scheme of things.
Yeah, I'm not sure I need therapy. I feel actually like I need a hangover cure because I didn't sleep very well last night, having seen that yesterday evening, and you wake up just feeling blue again, don't you? Today, my main takeaway was just that first half was truly scary. I really thought that so much had been made, maybe by the fans rather than the players, about this game in hand, which was the kind of the insurance policy in it, and it didn't pay out, and it never looked like paying out in the first half, where Blues was so energyless, so lackluster, so bereft of ideas, so short on confidence, and it wasn't just the players and the people on the pitch. It was it looked that way on the sidelines as well. It was just, that first half. I found it chilling, I have to say.
I remember you saying to me before the game, when we were kind of mulling over how the game could play out, that you weren't confident because Blues don't keep clean sheets. They can't keep clean sheets, and they very rarely score more than one goal. So in a game they probably needed to win, the odds on them winning were very small. And I mean, the goal they gave away was so poor. No options for Alex Pritchard in possession. He's surrounded by three Middlesbrough players, loses the ball, and it's a fantastic strike by Riley McGree, obviously. But from there, Blues didn't ever look like getting back into the game. They created absolutely nothing. No shots on target. I think one of the things, the crumb of comfort we took from some of the early games under Tony Mowbray, where results weren't quite there, was that Blues were creating a lot of chances and hitting the target and working the opposition's goalkeeper. That's really dried up in recent games, in the last couple, probably in the last three. And this run of games, 5 without a win, 1 point from 15, has really put the team in trouble. And I was one of those people clinging on to that game in hand, but I'm very worried at this point.
Yeah, as you say, and I don't know whether it was the enormity of the game in hand. The guaranteed 3 points that would make everything go away. Maybe that's what made the players look so sort of rabbits in heads latey, if you get what I mean. It just seemed too big an occasion for the players out there. We'll come on to the lack of leadership, I'm sure, at some point in our discussion. But yeah, you look at the table now, and yes, QPR, they're down there on the. Are they on the same number of points as Blues? Yeah, they are, but they're moving in a different direction, aren't they? Sheffield Wednesday are below Blues, but they're on a different flight path as well at the moment. If the teams that are down there, it's Blues, and obviously Rotherham are pretty much gone. It looks like Blues and Blackburn are the ones that are struggling to save themselves at the moment. Arguably Plymouth as well, potentially. But the other sides that are down there locked on the points, Stoke is on similar amount of points. Stoke as well. They've picked up a couple of wins. I'm not saying Blues won't win any of the next 9, but the 2 games against Millwall and Middlesbrough, they were sort of circled on the calendar, weren't they, as the ones that you could potentially make progress in, having played Ipswich and Southampton. And we're just left with a sensation that tomorrow hasn't come again, and tomorrow needs to come. The need to win. They need to win. 3 more games, I think, to stay in the league. And you just look at the Millwall and this Middlesbrough game, and I just can't see the next win at the moment.
If we're looking at the bigger picture, I mean, Rotherham are pretty much down. They are down. that'll be confirmed, in the next two or three weeks after the international break straight away. Sheffield Wednesday have given themselves incredibly a fighting chance with, I think it's 10 wins from 19 games. And QPR have taken 29 points from 20 games, which again, is verging on playoff form, isn't it? Huddersfield Town, who are the team in 21st at the moment, they face Rotherham at the weekend, which, everyone is looking at as probably the bank of 3 points in the Championship. So unless Blues, probably beat Watford on Saturday, they're probably going to spend the international break inside the relegation places. That's presuming QPR also either draw or beat Sunderland. Sunderland have lost their last 6. That's feasible as well. It's a crisis really when you think about it, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And yes, the club have been here before. I was going to say the team have been here before, but this team hasn't been here before.
Yeah.
The club and the supporters have been here before, but this one feels different because in the Bowyer battle and the Monk rearguard action and the who else saved them? Redknapp came in, didn't he? In those scenarios, that there was a core group of limited but seasoned, battle-hardened veterans that you could go to and say, right, we'll go 3-5-2 or we'll go 4-4-2 and be solid at the back and just get it forward and be direct and not take too many risks, and we'll eke out enough 1-0 wins to stay in the league. This squad isn't built that way, is it? The Harley Deans and the Christian Pedersens and the Kifton Bells, those the Max Collins, those scrappers aren't there at the moment. And if ever there was a couple of fixtures to need to see some scrapping, Millwall and Middlesbrough are it, and I didn't see it. This team's kind of built to play. Excuse me, and playing under pressure, playing when confidence is low is, it's a fantastically hard thing to do.
And this is the issue. And I mean, we're going to come on to some of the comments John Ruddy made last night, but one of the things that stood out for me during an interview with him was that he said Styles' ideas have got to go out the window at this point. We've got 9 games, we've got to kick our way through and get enough points to stay up. And I don't think this team is built to do that, Brian. I think it's a team that's probably going to be best served playing football the way it's been playing under, previously under Mowbray, not in the last 5 games. Well, not in the last 2 at least. I don't think, the midfield for starters. Who are you going to put into midfield if you want to scrap and try and nick points? You're going to be going back to Gary Gardner and Ivan Sunjic, aren't you?
I'm winning second balls. That's right. Yeah. Dazelle for all of his desire to get on the ball. He's not that player. I'm not convinced Blues are getting the best out of Peck in when they go to that 4-2-3-1 and play him as the double pivot. I don't think that gets the best out of him. The 4-1-4-1. Just looked horrible last night, didn't it? Dazelle looked absolutely overwhelmed, and he clearly needed some help. In there helping to screen the defence. If you put Peck in there, then as I said, that doesn't get the best out of him. JJ, don't know if that really is his best position either. We ended up last night with who finished ending the double pivot last night? It was Bacuna, wasn't it?
Bacuna and Peck, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, there are tactical tweaks that can be made. We'll come on to reasons to be for a little bit of cautious optimism in a bit. But at the moment, no, you're right. The short of going back to Gardner, Sunjic, and Djukovic, and lumping it forward, then it's not looking good at the moment.
One thing you've put down the running order is the Mark Roberts situation. Obviously, he played last night. Now, I think he played at Millwall on one leg, to be honest. He looked injured there, and he got through that game and played again last night. And I think from the first 2 or 3 minutes, it was quite clear that he was in some discomfort and was going to have to come off. And straight after the goal, he was subbed. I think we've both got strong opinions on Mark Roberts and the way he's perceived. Do you want to start us off, Brian, with your take?
You always hand me this one.
I can go first if you want. Actually, I'll go first because it looks like I'm passing the buck, and I've accused some of the Blues players of doing that today, so I don't want to do it myself. So I do think personally Roberts does get a hard time. I mean, if you look at I know he got a lot of stick for the Millwall goal Tanganga scored at the weekend, and people said that he bottled or ducked the header, having been put in the team to do one job, which was to win headers and give Blues that aerial power on set pieces. I don't think he ducked the header. I don't think he bottled it. He didn't. What happened was Tanganga has cleverly nudged him when the ball's coming in and giving himself some room to win that header. The mistake Mark Roberts made at Millwall was allowing himself to be put in a position where Tanganga could push him without the referee spotting it and picking up on it. That's the mistake he made, and it was a costly one. I thought he had to be in the 11 against Middlesbrough, again, because, Blues can't go into a game without him at the moment because, Sanderson's been unavailable, Bielik's unavailable. If you don't play Roberts at centre-back, you've suddenly got no kind of aerial threat on set pieces, no one to deal with the bombardment that would come from Middlesbrough. If that was the case, you look at the size of 3 Middlesbrough centre-backs, all big guys, all threats on set pieces. So I think Roberts had to play. He tried to play injured, clearly, and it didn't work. And I think Buchanan, when he stepped in, did well. But on Roberts, I think he gets probably a raw deal. I do think this is probably going to be his last season at Blues, but I don't think he's been any worse than anyone else recently in the last couple of games. I mean, he only played 15 minutes of the last one, but I think he's probably been put in this group that have carried Blues, in during difficult times over the last 6-7 seasons, and he's been tarred with that brush and he can't escape it. I think that's probably the best way of putting it. And fans obviously don't want those players to keep, keeping the team in this position at the bottom of the championship and fighting relegation every year. So, inevitably there will be changes, but I don't think Mark Roberts is as big a problem as people would have you believe.
Yeah, it's certainly not fair just to say that he's the reason Blues are in this situation, because I don't believe that's true. There was a moment last night early in the game where he underhit a back pass to John Ruddy, and you think, it makes it so difficult to defend him, against the avalanche of criticism that comes his way. But after that, bearing in mind he was pretty much playing. Well, he was playing injured, wasn't he? He really couldn't move that well. He did put his body on the line, and he did make blocks, and he did win headers. And I think it'd be unfair to just look at all the negatives and not see the fact that there is a guy that is trying there. Should we have? Do we need to have a discussion about the fact that should he have even declared himself fit in the first place? Some people would say no, but then he would know that if he doesn't try, then it's Buchanan and Ivu in the middle and in the back four, and then he owed it to his team to give it a go. At the risk of fawning over the guy, I think he probably deserves a bit of credit for trying to do a job for his team. And it would be very easy to say I've had a bit of criticism after the Millwall. I'm a little bit injured. I'm going to duck this one. I actually thought he tried. Should he have tried? Maybe not. But the fact he did, I think probably reflects well on him.
I think he had to play at Millwall, didn't he? He had to play at Millwall. You couldn't go to Millwall with Buchanan, who's a 5'10" left back, who's solid in the air, but a 5'10" left back playing at centre back alongside Emmanuel Ivu, who I don't think is particularly strong in the air. You couldn't go to Millwall without Mark Roberts and have Jake Cooper and Japhet Tanganga, dominating in both boxes. I don't think that was ever going to be an option. If you hadn't have played Mark Roberts, Lucas Djukovic would have had to play up front, wouldn't he, to deal with the threat of set pieces. So I think fair play to Roberts for doing that. And, against Middlesbrough, it's a similar situation. They don't need him against Watford because Dion Sanderson will be back, so Blues will have 2 centre-backs. But he was needed for those 2 games, and he tried to get through them. I agree with you. I think he deserves credit for them. it's Mark Roberts isn't in my best Blues 11, but I do think some of the criticism is a little bit unfair.
Listen, we're not going to convince the critics that he's Beckenbauer, he's the future, and I wouldn't dream of doing that. But that there are two sides to his performances, aren't there? And it's a little bit like a goalkeeper in that one error. The closer you get to the goal, one error is sort of magnified, isn't it? And unfortunately, that's the role he's been cast in. So yeah, should we move on? I've also put down here as the next thing, the relegation prospects. Now it's probably worth just looking at some of the odds, which I've stolen from a piece that our colleague Pete Smith did for Stoke. So he's put the odds he's included have the betting suspended on Rotherham as going down. Sheffield Wednesday 10-11, so they're still odds on to go down according to the bookmaker Pete Sourced. Huddersfield Town 13-8, then Blackburn Rovers 9-4, QPR 5-2, and Blues 3-1. With Plymouth at 4-1 and Stoke at 8-1. Millwall, Watford, pretty much out of it. So I'm quite surprised that the bookmakers consider Blues to be less likely to go down than QPR. And I think they're neck and neck with Huddersfield and Blackburn, if I'm honest, and I think Wednesday as well. Really, I think it's probably getting on from 2 from Rotherham go, and then it's 2 from those 4 in my view. And as I've said earlier, I think QPR and Wednesday seem to be on a slightly more upward trajectory.
I think the bookmakers have made the mistake that I've made for the last 3 weeks and thinking that Blues are probably too good to go down, and they've got too much.
We'll come to that.
Too much quality in their squad to be in this situation. And I'm looking at players like Koji Miyoshi, Sung Ho Peck, Tyler Roberts,
Ethan Laird,
Jay Stansfield, Laird, Drame, so many players, Pritchard, so many players in this squad. You look at Bakuna, 14 goal contributions this season, and think they shouldn't be battling relegation, and yet here we are. The teams you've put there, I think last time we talked about, the teams that will go down, and we put Stoke City in there. They've had a little bit of a resurgence under Schumacher to get some points. And I can see them getting out of it now. I'm actually looking at Blackburn Rovers and thinking, I hope they keep slipping up, because I think they're probably Blues' best bet, or one of the best bets of staying above that line. Sorry. Blackburn have got Middlesbrough away, Ipswich at home, Sunderland away, Southampton at home, Bristol City away, Leeds United away in their next 6 fixtures. I mean, if they take 3 points from those games, they've done well. That's what it's come to. We're looking at the teams and the fixtures they're playing and hoping they're going to slip up. And it doesn't always happen at this time of year, because teams pick up surprise results like Sheffield Wednesday have done for the last, 3 months, like QPR have done for the last 3 months. Blues need to go on a run of their own now, and they need to get 3 or 4 wins from this final 9 games, because I actually still think it's going to take a higher tally than usual, because we're on for a 50 plus, I think.
And what's worrying is the last 2 results don't suggest that they've got that in them. You can look at Ipswich; they're 1-1 away to Ipswich with 10 minutes to go, and yes, they weren't brilliant in the first half, but they'd held their own just about. And then Southampton, they got sucked into a basketball match, but looked decent going forward, didn't they? Against Southampton, creating lots of chances. So you can say yes, this is a team that has goals in them, hasn't given up the fight, is still clearly battling away. But then just to underperform in the last 2, that's what's sent a chill down my spine. And that's not to say they can't win any of the sort of last 9 games. There's a couple in there that look really difficult. But what the point I'm making is that the last 2 games don't point towards winning many of the last 9, do they?
No, they don't. And I think you can look at the Southampton game, which is the most impressive performance of those 5 fixtures, and say that was because Southampton were so intent on playing themselves, they allowed Blues to play as well. And Blues have got quality, as we know it, in positions, especially in midfield and attack, and they can play. It's teams like Millwall and Middlesbrough who play a different style of football, slightly more direct and aggressive, that Blues need to get points, but have needed to get points against and haven't been able to. Southampton was a free hit. You look at the fixtures now as well, Brian. Watford at home, QPR away, Preston at home, Leicester away, Cardiff at home, Coventry at home, Rotherham away, Huddersfield away, Norwich at home. There's only one of those games, actually two of those games if you include Watford this weekend, Watford and Rotherham, where the two teams the Blues are playing have very little to play for. The rest of the teams have all got something riding on the remaining games of their season. And that's also something I don't like at this time of year. You want to be playing the teams in mid-table, the teams that have got nothing left to go for.
Of those games that you've just listed there, the Leicester away feels, it feels a little bit pie in the sky that you go there and get something, although they're not perfect, and although the cup match, Blues should have been 3 up at half time in the cup match, but they'll play a different bunch of Leicester players in a different mindset. I feel in that one. Coventry never seem to do very well against Coventry, so there's two I'm not massively optimistic about. The other 7, look, if Watford were perfect, they wouldn't be where they are.
Yeah.
I don't think Preston are insurmountable either. Norwich could well be out of. On the last game of the season, Norwich last game of the season, that they could be either out of the playoffs or in the playoffs by that stage. So, it's too far to speculate, isn't it? But I just come back to the point of we need to see more than we have in the last 2 to feel any confidence about the next 9. Which brings us on to a couple of really interesting interviews post-match last night. John Ruddy spoke to the Blues TV, and he came in to do press as well, didn't he? And I've just taken a few comments from his interview with Blues TV, and I just want to know your thoughts on them. He says, on paper, our squad is too good to be in this position, but if we haven't got the performance levels that are required, and more importantly, the fight and the heart to get ourselves out of it, then we won't. And then, interestingly, he brings up an issue which is a strange one to bring up publicly, but it is a concern to the people I've spoken to. A lot of players are out of contract, a lot of loan players who are going to be leaving, but it means as much to those players who are going to be here as the ones who are going to be here for the next 1, 2, or 3 years. No one wants a relegation on their CV. What are your thoughts about those comments? The loan and the pending free agent line, and also the too much quality point that you made.
If I think that firstly on the loan and the free agent thing, I think that's a big issue. And I brought this up in my interview with John Ruddy as well. When you've got so many players who are going to be out of contract, I think it's 8 or 9 senior players, and also 5 loanees. 3 of whom, well, 2 or 3 at least, who know they're not going to be here next season. Then it's quite easy to point fingers and say, well, they're not going to be affected massively if Blues do go down. Do they, need to really? Do they need Blues to stay up? Do they really desperately want Blues to stay up? And Ruddy basically said, it's going to be on our CVs, on our careers, a reflection on us. I'm coming towards the end of my career. I don't want a relegation on my CV. So that's him. I've no idea what the others are thinking about that. It's a problem for me. It's a real problem. Even I'm not questioning any of their professionalism, because when we're in a job, we'll do it to the best of our ability until the day we're not in that job. But they're not going to be affected, in the grand scheme of things. Many of these players won't be in League One if Blues do end up there next season. I'm looking at the starting 11 last night. Ethan Laird, Lee Buchanan, Peck, Miyoshi, Pritchard and Jordan James are the only ones who are under contract for next season. So 6 of the 11 under contract for next season. Jordan James potentially going to be moving on this summer as well. The bench as well, similar story. That's the big concern for me. It's a huge concern for me, Brian. I said it to you before the game. If I could, I'd pick a group of players who I know are going to be here next year. But Blues haven't got the capacity for that. They haven't got enough really where they can be like, we're just going to play this 11 because all of these guys, if we do get relegated, it is going to directly impact them.
Yeah, what I would say of the lone players who played last night, I mean, Cody Drame came on, didn't he, quite early?
Yeah,
he certainly didn't look like a player who was chucking it in.
Stansfield too.
Exactly. Stansfield too. Ivu, I think we're in agreement that whilst he might not be the best, he's probably playing as well. Certainly, he is playing as well as he has done in a blue shirt, isn't he? So he looks to be on message. Dazelle, I don't want to just pick on Dazelle. I thought Dazelle had a poor game last night. Although I would say to him about him, I did feel that he did keep showing for the ball and he did keep trying to make something happen before he was taken off at half time. I wouldn't question any of their motivations or their professionalism. I think it would be wrong to go down that route. What I would say is I think confidence is a big issue, and when players lack confidence, I think it can look like they lack other things as well a little bit. But I don't think Dazelle hid by any stretch of the imagination. And with Oliver Burke is another lone player. He's not played for some weeks now, so he doesn't look like he won't be here next season anyway, will he? So
It's interesting that Rudy made those comments because that's clearly something that players are conscious of. Because Alex Pritchard mentioned a very similar thing after the defeat at Millwall on Saturday. So maybe it's something they're seeing themselves in some. Rudy did also mention that he thinks that Blues are carrying a few too many at the moment. That's always a recipe for disaster, isn't it? So, Mark Venus and the coaching staff need to make sure on Saturday when Blues play Watford that every single player is fighting and sweating blood, as Rudy said, for the cause.
Yeah, indeed. Mark Venus, just quickly, his interview, he mentioned that the one word that was missing last night was equality, and then he went on to say that the one bit of quality Middlesbrough produced was the moment that won it for them. I mean, the quality wasn't great, but I think energy and leadership were if I'm going to choose other words to throw into the melting pot, those would be the two of the words that I would select. I've put here, were there any positives to take from the Borough game? I think we don't have to spend too long on that one, do we? Which I don't think there were, other than the fact that the second half they probably played with a bit more tempo, and I think key to that was the point that I want to talk about now was Lucas Jukovic coming onto the pitch. Do you agree? Did you see a difference in the team when Jukovic came on?
Some more urgency, definitely, for the final 20 minutes while he was on the pitch. There was only really one kind of time Blues looked like they might breach Borough's goal, and that was when there was a long ball. I think it was from Tyler Roberts, was kind of just hoisted into the area, and Senny Ding, the Borough goalkeeper, dropped it, and Jukovic was kind of in the vicinity. So it's his presence that was obviously putting Middlesbrough under a little bit more pressure, and he couldn't quite get to it. I think Vandenberg put it behind before he could reach it, but he was just more threatening. I think Blues got forward so many times, especially in the second half. Ethan Laird down the right hand side and didn't put the cross in purely because Jay Stansfield was the only person in there, and he was surrounded by 3 big centre backs who were always going to dominate him aerially. So Jukovic gave Blues that option. I don't think they used him quite enough in terms of there wasn't as many crosses going into the box in the final 15, 20 minutes as I would have liked with him in there. But looking at it now, because of his experience in this situation, because of his leadership skills, I would probably play him against Watford on Saturday. And I think I'd use him in the final 9 fixtures a lot more than he's been used probably in the first 37 games of this season. He's been a bit part player this season, hasn't he? 3 starts, we've put it down there. I'd have him, as a regular fixture in the team while it's in this position, because he's been there before. He knows how to get a team out of it, and you're never going to question his desire and commitment while he's on the pitch of Blues.
No, I mean, let's analyse what you get and what you lose. Clearly, you lose something on the press, don't you? He's just not going to put the centre backs or the goalkeeper under the same level of pressure that someone like Stansfield does. What you get, and I think there's also a risk that with him on the pitch, it becomes a bit easier for players just to lump it forward to Juke in hope, doesn't it? Rather than take a bit more responsibility and try and play through the thirds. What you get, I think, is you get that leadership. I think you get some presence at offensive and defensive set pieces. I think you get some accountability. I think teammates respond to Djukovic, and I also think what you get is you get to free Stansfield up from playing in really congested areas. As you said, when in the first half, particularly when Laird or Pritchard looked across the ball in from the right, Stansfield just didn't stand a hope, did he? And he actually looked brighter when he came onto the left, and there was a little bit of space in behind the Middlesbrough wing backs for him to get down the left and down the byline and put some balls across the box. So I think it takes that responsibility of being the target man or being the focal point off Stansfield, and I think it, as I just said, it brings leadership and a bit of aerial presence and an out ball and makes the ball stick upfield a little bit. So I know people, I mentioned it last night on Twitter and that, got quite a lot of, it's 2024 and we're still relying on Djukovic. Well, yeah, at the moment, I think we have to, yeah.
That is what it feels like, isn't it? With Stansfield, Tony Mowbray mentioned at the outset that he thinks Stansfield's a footballer and didn't necessarily see him as an out-and-out striker. But Stansfield's had to play there because Blues haven't had any other options throughout this entire season, really, or not as effective other options. I think Stansfield will benefit from playing behind Djukovic. I think he's liked playing with him in the time they have spent on the field together, and I think it's useful for me. And also, you know what it would do, Brian, when Alex Pritchard is trying to find a way out of his own defensive third and looking forward and seeing no options and running into 3 opposition players, maybe that ball could have gone long before it went into Pritchard. Maybe it could have gone straight up to Djukovic and Blues could have played from there. I don't want to be that person. I don't want Blues to play that way. And I know they're not going to play that way long term. But for the next 9 games, it doesn't really matter how they play, does it? As long as they get enough points on the board to stay in the Championship. And at the moment, I do feel as though they would be better served with Lukas Djukovic on the field than off it.
Just need to hold our nose a little bit, don't we, and put up with it for another 9 games.
Yeah.
It's not what Mowbray has come to the club to do, not what Rooney was brought to the club to do, and I don't think it was even the way that John Eustace particularly wanted to go. Had he been given more runway, but yeah, it is 2024, and even with new owners, we are in this situation again. And yeah, this is a proven solution. I'm not saying that you play Djukovic, everything's okay, but it's one way out, isn't it? And just repeating what's happened for the last couple of games, would, in my view, produce less returns than playing Djukovic would.
Yeah, I know. I'm with you. Do you want to move on to the final subject on the running order we've put together for this podcast?
I will. Sorry to interrupt. Yeah, now it's the talk of a caretaker. So bringing somebody in for 9 games, another manager in for 9 games, just to sort of be a guide, a steadying hand to support Mark Venus. Now, I want to say that if this comes across as disrespectful to Tony Mowbray, then it absolutely is not intended to. Tony Mowbray's welfare and health is the most important thing in this conversation. And I really don't want what we're about to say to come across as disrespectful, because you and I have both got small man crushes on Tony Mowbray, haven't we? And the prospect of a Blues under Tony Mowbray returning in the summer and playing a Tony Mowbray style in the Championship, that's what we both want. That is the absolutely our roadmap and what we want to see happening in the next couple of months. But there has been some talk on social media about bringing somebody in for 9 games, and people have kicked around the idea of Gary Rowett maybe coming in the short term and just steadying the ship and then handing back to Tony Mowbray. Alex Neil was there last night. Now, this is absolutely only you and I speculating. There is no suggestion that Alex Neil is going to be airdropped in to fill in for Tony Mowbray. But I'm just going to ask you that all said, the basic question is, do you think there's a case for a caretaker or a caretaker interim? How does that work? Would it even be the right thing to do? Is it too insensitive to even discuss? What do you think?
It's a very uncomfortable subject, isn't it? We're obviously having it because a lot of fans now, an overwhelming number of fans, are obviously putting it forward. In my opinion, it would only ever happen. I personally don't think it will happen. I don't think it should happen. I think it only could happen if Tony Mowbray agreed to it and said, I'm going to take until the summer, and was happy for someone else more experienced as a manager to come in and oversee the final 9 games or whatever it is. It wouldn't be the final 9, it'd be after the international break, even if it was to go on. From what I'm told, that's not something that's been discussed or of interest by people at the club. Obviously, these things change. Panic buttons are pressed, as we've seen a lot this season. I think it'd have to be something that Tony Mowbray would be on board with, and I don't think he would be. And while I think Mark Venus is a reluctant leader, I think that's been quite evident in his press conferences, and when he's tackled the subject of Mowbray being away. I think it's only right that he sees this job through until Mowbray comes back, and then Blues go forward from there. The risk you're obviously taking is if the results don't improve, then Blues could end up in League One. I think we're all hoping desperately that Tony Mowbray is able to return in the not too distant future and stop this slide before it really gets out of control.
Yeah, I'd echo that. I don't think it's the time for that caretaker situation right now. I think there are still tactical things. We just discussed the Jukovic plan. I still think there are things on the pitch that can be done to make the team harder to beat. And it would just feel awful just doing that to Venus, to Mowbray. So yeah. Let's hope it doesn't come to that, as I said at the start, I cannot state enough that Tony Mowbray's health is the utmost concern in this situation. So yeah, it's certainly a get well soon from me and Alex, and it would also be it's an over to the players. The ball is in your court now to make this not necessary.
I think the players have really let Venus down, to be honest, over the last 5 games. You look at the first couple, we all expected Blues to lose, but the games away at Hull, the performance first half was very poor. They were rescued by Jukovic there, and the last 2 performances have been, substandard really. When you think about it, the Blues have turned up for 25-30 minutes at Millwall and barely laid a glove on Middlesbrough in 98 minutes. So I think the players really owe Venus, who is the one who keeps having to front up for these performances. He's the one who's been put in the uncomfortable position. He's been a coach for 20 years. Only once as he decided to set foot in a dugout, and that was probably because Coventry City at the time, back in 2016, after Tony Mowbray had left, needed him to see them through for a little while. He clearly doesn't want to be a manager, has never had any desire to be a manager. So, you know, the players need to play for him on Saturday and also play for Tony Mowbray and make sure that when he does return, the club isn't in League One.
And I think that's where we leave it for now. Once again, I hope that hasn't come across as insensitive. We have addressed it because people are talking about it, and we didn't just want to duck the issue. But hopefully Alex's and mine opinion on that are clear enough. And it's a get well soon from us to Tony Mowbray, and it's a keep right on to the rest of you.